What's up, guys? It's Maynard back with another video. Today I got the Crate G1600XL. I'm gonna do a little review for you guys. So the main reason I want to make this video is because this amp and a lot of other amps that I like to own and buy are pretty obscure, and there's not really any good like mic'd up videos online. So I want to go ahead and change that. I want to go ahead and showcase how this amp sounds on the clean and the overdrive channel. I'm mostly a hardcore and death metal player, so I'm going to demonstrate that side of the amp more so, but I'll still show you guys what it can do. I'm using my Charvel, or not Charvel, it's a Charvet. It's made in Japan in the 80s. It's got a Seymour Duncan SH4 in the bridge and nothing else. This amp is 160 watts. It gets pretty freaking loud, so that's good if you want to use it for a live show. I'm using it through a Mesa Traditional, I think is what it is. It's the one that's not oversized. I'm using it through a Mesa straight cabinet and a Marshall 1960A. The Marshall has a SM58 with the dust cap taken off, so it's like a 57. And then the Mesa has a PGA 57, which is pretty much a Shure SM57 without the 6K upper frequency spike. Both of the mics are placed offset from center, and then I also have an Audio-Technica AT2020 room mic to demonstrate that. I'm going to go ahead and start on the clean channel. All the knobs are at noon, and then the volume's just turned up a little bit. The bright switch isn't on, and there's no reverb. To mention, my guitar is in B standard, and yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and give myself a little more high end and take some mids out. The bass is at noon, but you can't really tell because it's missing the tip of the knob, but you're just gonna take my word for it. This amp also features this bright switch, which I'm going to go ahead and turn on. Take this back a tiny bit. It's very typical for a solid state amp. There's really no like any sign of breakup at all. It's extremely clean, so you're never really going to get any crunch on this channel. Some might say that this sounds flat and boring, but I personally like it. This amp also has this reverb knob, which I'm going to go ahead and turn up. I don't know if all of them are like this, but mine hums really bad when you turn it up, but I'll still showcase it anyways. I have a Boss Super Chord, which I'm going to engage real quick. In my opinion, this is a really competent clean channel, especially considering I only paid $85 for this head. This is a really great clean channel that I would consider using. So moving on to the overdrive channel, all the EQ knobs and the gain knobs at noon. This is turned up a little bit so that it doesn't clip my audio interface. So starting off, this amp sounds pretty boxy if you just leave everything at noon, but first of all, I'm going to go ahead and give myself some more gain. This is about 8 on the knob. This focus knob is kind of like a really big mid scoop as you dial it clockwise, and then as you go counterclockwise, it gets really flat and mid heavy, but not in a pleasant like Marshall type of way. It just gets really boxy and overbearing. So, like I said, I'm a death metal player and hardcore player, so I'm gonna showcase it in that sense. Actually, I'm gonna bump that up all the way. I'm gonna scoop this a little more. That's a little too scooped. I'm gonna bring it back to about 8. So as you probably hear, this amp gets pretty fizzy, but honestly, I kind of like that. It's a really, this amp really sounds like 90s death metal to me in a really good way. I really like that fizzy solid state type of sound. So this lead knob, so if this lead knob is basically your treble, this is like a contour knob of sorts, and then sub is your bass, obviously. So this lead knob is centered at 1000 hertz, which is kind of weird if it's supposed to be your treble knob, because that's really more of your mid-range. So if you didn't know that, you would go in thinking that that's like your treble knob. So if you try to dial that up, let me show you how it sounds without dialing it up. If you dial it up, you would want it to get more like trebly and bright, but instead it kind of rolls off the high end a little bit and gets boxy. So actually, if you want more high end, you should dial it backwards, which kind of does scoop it a little bit, but it also brings out some high end. As you bring this back, it does get brighter, but it also gets very scooped. So I would recommend bringing this up. You kind of want to use these two in conjunction with each other. So kick on a mini tube screamer, which has the level at max, overdrive at none, and tone at like 2 o'clock. If you want to get really stupid with it, you can go ahead and just scoop them all the way. this amp just screams 90s death metal, to me, honestly. Especially with both of those knobs scooping the frequencies all the way. I'm really fond of this type of tone. Now, I can completely understand if you think that this amp sounds like crap, because, in all honesty, it technically does, but I think it's kind of an acquired taste. I really like how it sounds. So if we want to get a little more tame with it, here, bring that to about, I think that's like 3 o'clock-ish. This amp is really extremely similar to the GX130C, except without the stereo power amp and stereo chorus. I've owned a GX130C, I no longer have it, but I can say from experience owning both, this definitely sounds better, like 100%. The GX130C kind of sounds like it has a blanket over the tone, if you know what I mean. Like, it sounds like it has a really big high-end roll-off. It sounds really, like, muffled and boxy, but this, you could say it sounds fizzy, which it kind of does, but I really like the way that it sounds. It sounds like fizzy, but in a really cool, harsh, like, death metal type of way, which I really like. This amp gets really bassy, so if I just like crank that up all the way. I can see that just probably clipped the living crap out of the mics, so I'm gonna bring that back a little bit, but yeah, I think this amp sounds really good. If we want to bring it back to like a more reasonable crunch type of setting, like right here, I just turned the tube screamer off. It's not really my first choice if I'm going for like a classic rock type of thing, but if you're a metal player like me, you will probably be very fond of this amp. Kick on an HM2 just for craps and giggles. this is a really great sounding cheap amp. I mean, 160 watts and it sounds like this. It's kind of hard to argue with. I picked this one up for 85 bucks off of Facebook Marketplace, so it's definitely out there if you look hard enough to like find it for super cheap. Amps I'd compare this to would be the Valve State, which I have one sitting right above it, just because it also does that really scooped like 90s death metal tone. However, this amp has way more gain than that does. And honestly, I think it sounds better. But the Valve State is definitely more of a versatile amp, because this kind of just does like the super scoop thing and a really good clean channel, and that's about it. Whereas the Valve State does do like a really good crunch, and just like it has the overdrive channel without the contour knob, so it sounds a lot like more normal if you use it that way. Overall, I would recommend this amp a lot if you're into death metal. It plays really nice with all the cabinets I ran it through. It handles pedals well, like it handles the HM2 well, which some amps don't. They just kind of crap the bed. The reverb on this one really doesn't like work. I don't know if that's just mine or if they all do that. It's probably just mine, because I doubt that this amp's ever been serviced. All the knobs are like missing, as you can tell. They're all just like random knobs, but I mean, $85, I can't argue with this amp. A lot of people like to compare the 80s and 90s Crate amps to the VH140C. I don't own a VH140C, however, one of my friends does, and after playing through it for a long amount of time, I can definitely say that this amp does a similar thing in the sense that it does the 90s scooped type of tone. However, the way that the knobs work are just entirely, completely different. They have a similar amount of gain. I would say the VH140C definitely sounds better and more versatile, especially because its clean channel has a gain knob, so instead of just being volume, you can like have a little bit of crunch if you want. I would say that, I mean, they're pretty similar. You can tell that they come from like the same type of like family, so to speak, but they're definitely not the same, so I wouldn't call this a VH140C clone like a lot of people like to do. Same goes for the GX130C. That's definitely not a clone. They're very similar, but they're not the same. So yeah, that's all my thoughts on the G1600XL from Crate. Really good metal amp if you can find one for cheap. I don't know if I'd pay more than like $300 for one that's like super clean and comes with a foot switch and stuff. But yeah, this amp's really worth the money, and I'd keep a lookout for one. Thanks.